I pressed.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Raymond Vromans. I'm from the Netherlands and closely working together with Mentessa as a local impact partner. A great welcome to everyone here. In a few moments, I'll introduce to you Tina Ruseva, who's the CEO and founder of Mentessa and a super interesting speaker and expert on AI. Um, and so that's also the topic that we're going to address today. But before we do, let me just quickly show you as how we look at things today in this modern day world with so much technology going on. And as you can see, we already had so much, changes in the last decades in technology, making things available, making things easier. But at this moment, the whole submerge and the speed of things with AI coming in, it really accelerates. Um, it accelerates cultures. We need to pick up the pace, but it also has an influence on culture, on organizational culture. So it becomes more visible. Now, in this webinar, in a moment, Tina will take us through these three topics actually. So where do we stand today with AI? What's the impact we see and hear also from research in organizations, and how does it or how is it already influencing organizational culture, but also giving you leads and things to work with. So what to do about it. So I'm very happy to invite Tina to the stage as well. Hi, Tina.
Hello. Hi, Raymond. So good to see you.
Good
Hello,
morning. Yes,
everybody.
it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. As I said, you've been already working quite a long time and a lot with AI. So really curious to hear from your perspective and experience on, the impact that we currently see and that's maybe also up ahead in the near future within the effect it has on organizations.
Yes, and I'm really happy that you didn't say you have a lot of experience in culture where we normally put with Mentessa, but with AI, because I think this is the thing that many people misunderstand today. AI is actually a lot about people and culture. So it is really not just this tool, but it is, especially in organizations, what we do with it and what it can enable us, but also what it can hinder in organizations. And this is why I find this topic today super interesting. I'm really hopeful that we get some comments from the audience. So,
Yeah, please
everybody, if
do.
you're out
Please
there,
Please give us your questions in the chat,
yes,
and then we'll pick them up along way the presentation. Yeah.
yes, please. The more, the better. And I think one of the things about the technology in the workplace is that it enables exactly those discussions. So let's hope for this. And we had some comments last time. I hope we at least double them this time. And I'm really, really excited to be talking to you about this.
Right. Well, the floor is yours.
Okay, very, very good. Then let me start with the agenda again. So I would like to, uh, I have read a few studies around New Year's Eve, and I would like to share with you a few numbers that we find very interesting. Um, and then we'd like to discuss together, hopefully with you, how those trends, developments, those insights seem to be influencing workplace culture. And then we'd like to give you a little bit of input on what we think we can do about it. Because just resigning is not an answer. AI is here to stay, just like software, the internet, and everything we didn't vote for will be here and around forever. It is how it goes. Technology is driving progress, and we want to be the forces designing and co-designing and co-driving it together with it. So I will mm, make myself a little smaller here on the screen and would like to start with a question. So I hope we have a few experts in the line. And I would like to start with a really, 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 really hard question. And it is, what do you think is harder? To change one individual's way of thinking slash working slash believing, or B, to change an entire organization's culture. So if you're out there and if you're listening, if you have some hands, you can just drop the letter, or you can, write a comment if you dare to. In the meanwhile, I will ask Raymond the question.
Oh
How
yeah,
do you
yeah.
see this,
I was
Raymond?
thinking about it. So I think the danger in this question is that it might seem so easy, that you would go for A, to change an individual's way of thinking. There's influencing. We can have a good talk, and then maybe someone changes their mind or their way of doing.
Mm,
But when you're looking at B, an organization's culture, it sounds so much bigger. That's my first thought on the question.
yeah, I chose it for this reason. I find it also, it seems so easy, and then in the moment you think about this, you realize both are really very hard problems. And what I wanted to do with this little quiz is not to give the answer, because it certainly is, it depends, but I just wanted to um, sensitivize the audience about how difficult culture actually is to build in a person or in an organization. It's just, we are talking about it so much, especially here on LinkedIn. We are the workplace learning community, and so many people come here to learn and connect with others. And there is tons of content on culture, great content too. So it is possible that the impression emerges that it is something like mundane and something so easy that so many people could be talking about, and it is definitely not. So this is what I wanted to achieve with this quiz. So now this very complicated subject on individual or organizational culture, because in an organization both collide, is suddenly a matter of change under additional influence, the influence of AI adoption. And I think what we can say about 2026 is that AI has arrived. It is not already a future trend anymore. It is not anymore, an innovative project. The numbers that I've brought to you show that a lot of organizations are actually making AI part of their daily business. For example, here the AI agent survey from PricewaterhouseCoopers shows that 65% of organizations were piloting agentic systems last year. This is quite a big number. This is 2 out of 3. I have another number from McKinsey from their The State of AI survey. And if you take a look at this timeline, while AI used to be something like really like a niche topic 10 years ago, the majority of organizations today say that they are using and adopting AI. And those numbers are not surprising. Those numbers are not probably new to anyone who has tried out a little bit something with ChatGPT, and who has in the past 2 or 3 years informed yourselves about the topic. I'm sure a lot of you today know how widespread the adoption of AI actually is, even before. But those numbers in the workplace, they're really something, and they're changing the way we work, and they are changing the way we have to be thinking about culture, because there are other numbers too, and those show that even if we are largely experimenting, trying to adopt, using funds to fund projects in organizations with AI, the majority of those projects never actually scale to a real enterprise use case. The majority of those projects fail as something that we play around or just are used in a very, very small context. So there is this big picture of, there is this huge capability with artificial intelligence and digital technology in general. We can become faster, we can be more connected, we can take more data driven decisions, we can be therefore smarter, we can more timely respond to customer requirements and needs, we can adopt faster newer technologies in our daily business, but we see it's actually not working so well. And the reason tightly connects to what I commented in the beginning, that AI actually is not so much about technology, but about people, because the people that use AI need to change how they work with it and how they see a tool in their daily jobs. So if we zoom out of the technology and if we look at the workplace, we will see that currently there are different factors that kind of influence workplace culture, and those factors are not going into one direction, but they're pulling it apart. They're diverging trends that kind of maybe are the reason why a lot of cultures today count as stagnating. So on the one hand side, we have this new capability and capacity to be very fast. I call it speed on the slide. So we can really rapidly develop the new webinar. We can really rapidly make research about customer requirements or some sentiments around some news that has been trending or exploded. But on the other hand side, with this speed and with this capacity at individuals' disposal, we lose alignment. So it is a negative trend, especially in terms of culture, that systems kind of drift from human goals and intent, and the less we feel aligned in our teams, the less we feel as a team. So that's like two diverging trends that uh, fight against each other and are competing forces in the AI adoption in the workplace. Another big thing is, I believe, also what the numbers from McKinsey and PwC show is that AI accelerates the adoption of innovation. So there are new ideas that can be faster tested. There um, can be, you can create a video faster. You can create a campaign a lot more efficiently. Also with a lot less alignment between different team members, because so much technological capability comes to the fingertips of an individual person. However, this, on the other hand, hand, uh, erodes the trust in teams, because decisions can be really ambiguous and ambivalent, and people see things differently. Not in every company and in every organization there is a policy about everything. Luckily, a lot of work still is a matter of choice, and where people have the entire capability at their fingertips, but their choices would diverge. This just erodes again this feeling of a community, of connectedness, and eventually of trust into into not only in the others and into leadership, but also of trust in the entire purpose of an organization. So those are quite strong forces that we need to factor in when building, designing, and talking about culture in 2026 and beyond. So to summarize, I would say AI doesn't destroy culture, but it definitely is something that pulls it apart.
And what do
So
you mean, Tina, with the pulling it apart?
Well, I hope I could visualize it a little bit with the forces on the last slide. It's kind of a, shall we go for speed or shall we go for alignment? And these inherent conflict in every organization, for example, between individual interests and the interests of the organization, the reason behind hierarchy and organizational studies, this kind of gets even stronger. It gets magnified through the faster speed and through the lesser alignment. So it's kind of a culture becomes impregnated with a lot more conflicts, even more conflicts than it has been ever before. So it
Yeah.
is difficult to say, are we learning or are we aligning? Because we kind of are always doing both. And this might feel for the individuals, for the employees, but also for the management as a constant struggle within, as something that is pulling people apart.
So it sounds like a real shift from the balancing act between the positives, what it can bring, how it can add value into organization, but also the downside because of that more rapid changes and improvement in speed to deliver, speed to market. It loses then maybe also the potential of the trust, as you said in the previous slide.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. And I don't
the
know,
alignment. Yeah.
how do you agree with those factors, by the way? How do you see this?
Well, I think I do recognize this. Is that in larger organizations, the organization is about people, but people do need to have clear settings about where are you moving. The goals, the objective need to be really clear,
Mhm.
and also who does what, who has which responsibilities. And I think also in that part, AI is kind of kicking in and puts questions to, yeah, but what does it say about, what's my added value in the organization, what's my role, and is AI going to replace me, or is it a tool I can use? So it brings a lot of questions, I think, as well to people. So how
Mhm.
do I do this? And I know
Yes,
also from my own experience that in one of the larger accounting firms, which is a global operator, it is one of the key strategic topics at senior management level. AI, it's all over the place. Yeah.
absolutely. And the way it we can summarize the consequence of those conflicts and of this huge potential against the huge um, burden on individuals is a cultural drift. And the cultural drift, there is a really great article by Forbes I have linked in the slides, and we can share later on with the participants in the comments of this event, is of the phenomenon that um, in situations of stress, organizations tend to gradually return to old ways of doing things, especially after a positive period of growth and progress. And this has been a phenomenon that we wrote about and we read about during and after the pandemic, because there was this, the economy was booming and flourishing, and then there was the stress situation of COVID-19. And then a lot of people, realized that you can also lead people remotely, that you can manage processes entirely digitally. There has been a boom of innovation and a lot of culture change to a positive extent after the pandemic and through it. However, just gradually, several years after that, we could notice that, you know, um, for example, in the domain of leadership, people gradually return to their patterns from before. And this cultural drift is something that currently a lot of companies experience too through the AI acceleration. This is just because it's so fast and so intense that people, management, but also employees, the leadership, everybody kind of need to hold on to something. And very often, the new things that we can learn and design are not there yet to hold on to. So we just hold on to to familiar stuff like habits or, former wisdom. So before I tell you what we can do about this and actually how this appears and why it matters, I would like to try a discussion again, and just ask, what feels familiar. So you can recognize cultural drift by many things, like for example that people stop asking questions. That in meetings there is only one person participating, everybody else is just attending, and it's less about we are solving a problem together and we are here to sit down and collaborate, but it's more about, okay, we have to have this meeting and I have to be there, because if I'm not, um, something, I'm afraid of the consequences. And then there is this, especially in Europe now, it's very evident, but I think also all over the world, that leaders, when the culture drifts, start managing people instead of, working with them. And it's not about the work any longer, but it is about more and more about rules and formal processes. And it's really not, for example, so much about what do our customers need right now, but it becomes more bureaucratic and no, this is how we've done it here, and this is what we need to, follow process and so on. So in a culture of drift, some of those things appear, and the most evident is that fear replaces excitement, especially when it comes about something new. Does any of those feel familiar to you, Raymond?
Yeah, I think what I recognize is I think it's the fear. I think it's the fear which replaces excitement, because it's kind of entering the great unknown. Uh, um, Clear boundaries seem to be fading. Boundaries about what's being required, where we're moving to, how fast, what can be expected of each other. So it's kind of for I think for many people, it's stepping into a great unknown, not knowing what it will bring, how the end will look like once we get through that
Hmm.
whole cultural drift and things. In any transformation, in every major change or transition, being in that middle of that process is uncomfortable most of the times, because we want to go back to the former one, like you said, to the things we knew, the things that worked, and we are not yet seeing where we will end up and how that will look like. So I think that's one I recognize, the fear of the unknown.
Absolutely. And the way this erodes performance at the end of the day, because businesses and organizations are around for a purpose. They're not there to build a culture. Culture just emerges naturally, and it can help or hinder the purpose. But the purpose of any organization is performance in some way. And the way that cultural drift erodes performance is that it kind of has this domino effect, starting with the fear, where those behaviors emerge, like the ones that we discussed, that fewer questions are asked, that people just take safer choices. For example, they postpone the project or they end some new project. Accelerator programs, innovation programs maybe get closed for some time, and then this leads to following back to habit as a what I'm holding on to, so that default routines override kind of new tools. For example, I have this new software, or I have this new AI capability, but because I am afraid, I would rather do things as I've always done them. Or for example, I want get others on board, but I will try to do it quickly by myself. And then this of course erodes engagement, because the less others are courageous and the less others experiment, the more it affects everybody. And then this is what happens, that meetings are attended, but the input is minimal. And all of the phenomena, quiet quitting, presenteeism, absenteeism, we've talked about in the last years, just get stronger. And I think the worst thing that is the consequence from all of this is that curiosity um, disappears. So we have like a rare exploration time beyond normal tasks. And this is something a lot of organizations we talked about with last year reported. They said, we have so much daily business that we never have time to go and learn about AI or about any new trends. I had a friend, a very close friend, that got sick. And during her sick leave, she studied and did a lot of courses about artificial intelligence. And she came back to her workplace, to her team after a few weeks. And none of them had done any of these because they were locked into their daily job. And when curiosity ends, the learning ends. And that's the major issue for organizations and why we're talking today. This is the reason why we called this talk Why Culture is the Bottleneck in 2026, because learning is not a nice to have today, but it's actually what we need to get the job done. So learning is performance in a way, because when everything changes so fast, if we are not incorporating learning in our work itself, if it is not learning in the flow of work, but it is just from time to time, then we cannot really deliver sustainably the performance that we need in order to respond to the changing requirements on the market, to respond to the new technology players that are out there, to the new capabilities. And I think what was really evident during the past years of recession in Europe was that the companies that try to control this new state with the old means, rather than learn about how they can use those new capabilities and opportunities for their customers and for their solution delivery, are the ones that really got more and more into trouble. So AI is tearing culture apart. It is causing cultural drift, and cultural drift at the end of the day, through a consequence of things, hinders learning. And learning is not only learning culture is a great culture to have, but learning in itself is something that you need to have today for any organization in order to be able to do the job. So what do we do as organizational leaders? We do a culture campaign, and the majority of those campaigns are something around communication. There is a really great study published in HBR. I will share it in the comments after the talk, that shows that for most leaders out there, culture is connected with the communication initiative. But the problem is that most of those initiatives fail. So 72% of formal culture initiatives show no meaningful improvement in employee trust, engagement, and retention. So we have this huge, very important, very tremendously complex topic of culture and organizational culture. Then we have this very intense influence by AI and acceleration and technology adoption that actually break our cultures and make them stagnant instead of learning. And we have the necessity to be learning so that we can deliver value to our customers. But all we try to do most of the time in most companies is to communicate about culture, for example, to write them down, to make a policy, to print some posters, to give out t-shirts and other swag. And we have the numbers that those initiatives all kind of fail. The problem is, and why they fail, I think, Raymond, you as an expert in those topics now, is culture change means change in daily behavior. So the solution of changing culture is not communication, but it is, as I nastily called it, maintenance, because it is really about making those desired daily behaviors, for example, learning, possible in the day to day, in the normal work, in the normal workflows of what people have to do, so that it's not something extra and it's not something I talk about. I'm not talking about mentoring, but I'm actually mentoring. I'm not talking about exploration, but I'm actually exploring. And the solution to really good culture initiatives is not only to introduce them and to talk about them, but to actually create a safe space for people to maintain those behaviors, values, to create an entire new system of acting in the way that the culture prescribes to it. What do you think, Raymond? You have joined me here on stage, so do you have something to
No,
say
I
about
think this
this?
is a
I'm
super
curious.
interesting part, and I do recognize also, in the work of trainings that I do in organizations, that often it's a lot of talk. There have been brilliant presentations. It's probably not the communication as such is probably really good, inspiring, motivating. But if communication is not followed by actually putting it into practice,
Mm,
by practicing what you preach, in a sense, it does not help. It's not enough. So, true change is also in changing behavior. And as you said, the biggest challenge is that people stop learning when the changes are so big or so fast because, oh my God, what's happening? We don't have the time anymore. But I think that's exactly where the key is, that, and especially I think it also is a leadership challenge to, especially in that situation of high rapid change and potential new opportunities, that you
mhm.
allow people, for instance, also as a behavior, to make mistakes,
Yes.
that's okay. Yeah. So that's one
Mhm.
example that comes to my mind. Yeah.
Absolutely, a super example. And this also connects to the question we started with: what is more difficult to change, an individual's person behavior or an organizational culture? Well, they're so super connected that it's actually very difficult to talk about A and B. It's kind
Yeah,
of all
absolutely.
connected. So um, I will summarize what we said so far. So we have AI that is steering culture apart. It causes cultural drift. Um, Cultural drift is something that people are aware of and they are trying to play against because they know that learning as a culture is a critical capability of any organization today, just to deliver value, not to be outstanding or innovative, but just to be doing your job. You have to be learning. That's the new reality we are. And most of the organizations try to work against the cultural drift with culture initiatives, however, based on communication. And the solution is actually maintenance, because culture is all about what we do, not about what we say. It is about behavior. So if we now are thinking about, learning is the new working, and what culture would we like to notice? So, what are behaviors that we would like to say in a connected learning culture? And I call this here a connected learning culture for two reasons. We don't want to drift. So, we want to have a connected culture. We don't want people to feel part of something. We want them to be exhibiting similar behaviors. We want them to be taking similar choices given similar questions, and so that they can rely on each other, so that we can have an environment of trust. And I have just brainstormed a few behaviors that might be desirable. For example, we would want to see employees proactively helping each other. So maybe if somebody has a problem, we are not, laughing at them, or we are um, reporting them to the manager, but we actually try and help them, like in a very good working group or community, in a company with a great team culture. This would be a behavior we could see. We would also want to see employees proactively connecting each other's expertises across teams. So this can be when we are talking about something and you tell me, oh, I'm starting this new project with this country and with, I don't know, agentic AI. I can say, oh, by the way, I have just heard that the Maria in the other department has started a project like this too. I will connect you, and then I'm writing an email to connect you. So those are behaviors that we would, for example, like to see in a connected learning culture. Then there would be like peer coaching is not a program for some few people, and there is a big tam tam about who can access it and how to access it, and oh my god, it's so expensive. But it's more like integrated, embedded into normal workflow, so that if I have a question about your area of work, Raymond, I can just book an appointment with you and ask you those questions, and you are not going to be grumpy. Maybe you're busy, and maybe you are going to be, rescheduling or making it a very short meeting, but it will be a general openness towards, helping peers. And there are many, many more. I think here on LinkedIn, there are so many examples of what could be a great connected learning culture on any level: leadership, management, governance. But I would just like to add one more. Feedback is part of daily business, and it's something people ask for. It's not something they fear or avoid. It's not something they take, poorly, but it's something that just people, not only within the team, give each other feedback, but also from the customers to the customers, and it's just like a um, never ending flow of learning and exploration. So if we would like to see those behaviors, so let's say we are launching an initiative and we want to build a culture that helps people do those things, not talk about them, but we want the behavior. And I have another question, and I hope there are some people online to drop a few examples in the chat. But I'm really curious, in the meanwhile, Raymond, so what interventions have you tried in the workplaces you've been active with, or what interventions have you seen or experienced your customers to do when trying to influence culture in this positive manner, so that it is a connected learning culture and people help each other more and learn more and give more feedback? So do you have some examples? What have you tried? What have you heard of? What have you experienced to be positive, or maybe even a negative example?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in some organizations, they really put continuous learning more and more central. Like you showed in the picture with the old work and the new work. So
Mm-hmm.
work, learn is actually the new way of working, and
Mm-hmm.
not once every 1 or 2 years I do a training,
Mm-hmm.
but continuous. And part of learning, it's not also only trainings. It can also be about, in terms of behaviors, stimulating feedback, as it was in your list that you showed previously. It's about, so in what do we expect people to give feedback on, and what's the methodology? How do they do that? How often? Most organizations, a bit based on the old way of looking at feedback. You got your mid-year evaluation, you got your end year, and that's the moment of feedback.
Mm.
But if you look from continuous learning, actually, a lot more times, maybe even weekly or even daily, little bits of feedback can be given. Positive feedback, of course, but also, hey, where's the room for growth? How could you do this better next time?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's one of the things I see in terms of continuous learning, and then focusing on making feedback a lower threshold, from a
Mm-hmm.
positive intention that we want to help people grow and develop. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, mentoring is also a great way of doing that, of the peer-to-peer connection, somebody else in the organization. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom already there, like the example you gave of that friend that you have. But what
So
what have you done? What have you tried? Maybe even at Mentessa, I don't know.
Um, happy to tell you, but can you be more specific when you say, like, organizations, for example, um, do install continuous learning? So what exactly do they do to do it?
Well, I think first of all, they need to create the new mindset that learning isn't okay. I look at the learning management system. I see there are many different trainings, and I pick one, and I have 2 days in the whole year which I actually spend on learning, and the rest of the year I actually just do my job. So
Mm-hmm.
that it starts with creating that different mindset, that learning is not only the moment that you go out of the office to a training location.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you make that smaller? How can you create smaller steps that we can do continuous learning,
Mm-hmm. And
even as learning on the job?
do you have some specific examples how they create those small steps?
Well, I think, as I said, it's also from starting from your role as a leader, as a manager,
Mm-hmm.
that not only at those formal moments, let's say twice a year, but in your one-on-ones, that you don't only talk about the business stuff. Have you done your check in the box? But also, hey, by the way, I've seen you doing this, which was great, and I've
Mm,
also seen you last week doing that. But maybe you could do that differently. Do you have some idea? So it's also about having that conversation more frequently.
mm.
um, I think that's some of the examples that I see,
Yes.
and also
And I like this
sharing best
example.
practices is another example.
I like this example, and you asked me what we do at Mentessa, and this is, for example, something more frequent conversations
Yeah,
that is like it sounds so simple, but in most companies, the conversation between specific team members is only in a team workshop, and with the manager, it's only like once a week, which is today in a learning culture not enough. And um, other things are, for example, that you want to go ahead with a good example of documenting your work, being precise. One thing that I just have from today is when people don't just share a link to a resource. Hey, look at this. I think it's going to be interesting for you. But they give context and they say, about our discussion on XYZ as a customer, I recently read this study about this, and it summarizes how this could be done. And then there is a link. And I think this is just a behavior exhibited in a connected learning culture when I'm not just sending out a link so that it's not my fault that somebody didn't get acquainted with the
mm,
information and they didn't see it and I hide it. I'm not just washing my hands and cleaning them from responsibility, but I'm actually interested and actively, proactively contributing to the people on the other side to save time, understanding why it matters to them, and also if it matters, but also to put it into a context. And I think those are behaviors that are really great.
I
And
think the last one by Tina is also an interesting example of how a lot more information is available,
mm,
but in terms of the two dimension of the positive and the negative on AI, that the speed that we get information, that we share information, that we throw information to the other side, without taking the time to give some context or alignment, or also there you find that tension between speed, as you said earlier, and giving context or aligning on how and why is this relevant for you. Yeah, good, interesting
absolutely.
example.
Yeah. Yes, and I like those little examples because those are what work consists of to a large extent, like to 80%. It is about those things. And of course, culture starts at the top, and we need those culture initiatives and the communication, and all of this is, um, mandatory. However, in 80% of the daily work, people learn from other people the behaviors that actually make up this culture, and those are those little things. So we don't have very courageous audience today, so we don't have any more comments. I'll leave it to that, and I will just come out to an idea that we at Mentessa have. So one intervention that you can try to create a connected and learning culture is to reframe mentoring from a program towards an infrastructure for culture. And what I mean by this is to make it large scale, to make it available on a daily basis, and to make it more accessible so that you can translate this strategy and this very big, ask, be learning and be connected and be helping with each other and be sharing your knowledge into daily behavior. For example, here on the platform, You can reach out to everybody. This is where we want you to do it. This is where it is okay to do it. And this is where we measure it, and we will reward good behavior, which actually reinforces positive behavior or desired behavior. Then this is something that can anchor judgment in ambiguity, because if I have like mentoring as an infrastructure, if it is allowed to ask an expert, alleged expert on a topic that I'm currently working on or I need expertise on. Let's say I have my first international customer and I would like to know about doing business with this country or on this industry from somebody that is known for having expertise in that from the company, that it is okay to consult them, because then it's not a single a person taking the choice, but it's actually a more informed decision. And this also strengthens trust and builds community by, giving people the very informal feedback that they are needed, that their expertise is in action and it's not like stalled or unwanted. Then it also, due to these examples, creates psychological safety under pressure, because I am not left alone. I used to work for Microsoft and I really liked how everybody was talking about them. They at Microsoft, they will come and they will show and they will bring. But at the end of the day, just like in any other large company out there, most people are doing their jobs very much alone or very much in smaller teams. So if we would reframe mentoring not as a program, something that I do, one time in my career after a certain number of years and after a certain number of accomplishments, I will get this as a benefit, but it is more like the infrastructure of how we do our culture behavior enforcement here in the company. Then, of course, I have larger psychological safety because I feel confident that I am not alone. I'm actually, if I'm doing something for the first time, let's say I'm having my first employee ever as a new leader, or I am having, my first keynote at an event, or I am for the first time doing a management presentation at this or that level. I actually have others who I can consult, even if briefly, and that without a very big, barrier to do this, without costing anybody too much time. So we think that this is a really good idea, and research shows that it not only helps people perform better and feel better, those are the first three bullet points, but it actually connects diversity and inclusion in the company, because if it is easier to ask people for advice, it is then easier to get in touch with people that are working on other things, that are, from a different background, that have maybe a different view on stuff. And then it is easier to be more inclusive in general. Um, there are a few things, however, it is not so easy to, just to say, to have a communication campaign about making mentoring an infrastructure. There are some things that you need to put in place for that to work. So just installing, we at Mentasa have developed a great mentoring and community platform. Just bringing this solution into your company won't do it. So what you need is, one framework that people can get oriented about this, with goals, with structure, with guidance. For example, there should be some standard booking time when consulting peers, and the standard should be the same for everybody, like 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour or whatever is the standard, but there should be one standard. There should be some expectation that people will be asking questions that are connected with their goals. And this has something to do with formal training around this, but it also has to do with the technology and how it is reinforced. Then the second thing is that installing mentoring as an infrastructure, reframing it away from a program to some few, to a larger resource of sharing experiences and know-how and skills in the company, requires some community building. And community uh, starts with really small groups. So there needs to be some sort of facilitation around, different topics for peer groups, or maybe even thematic circles. In Germany, we call those Arbeitsgruppe. There should be, loud and lively lived Q&A sessions, all-hand sessions, different exchange formats, just so that the behavior of learning and sharing with others becomes very, very tangibly um, an experience that we do every day at work. For example, we at Mentessa have a Friday meeting. It's called Demo Day, where everybody in the company shows what they have worked on during the week, not in details, because it's not about micromanagement, but it is about sharing milestones or, obstacles that we can get help from others, or, just informing others about something new that's happening thanks to our job. So this is also a community building, and this is a purposeful peer learning session that has nothing to do with the technology it's conveyed on, but it has to do with how do we make learning culture observable behavior, so that we don't just talk about it, but we just learn to do it in also other contexts and other meetings and other tools through this. Then there should be some another best practice is that there should be some structure matching. If we just say, dear company, you can talk to whoever you want, whenever you want, naturally, without an organization, without a logic, this will lead to extremities, like some people get booked all the time, can do their job, others can never book. So there should be some structure around this. And technology is really great in structure, a lot greater than we people are. We are the creative part of the equation. So that's something that really can help. Then there should be clarity of guidance. For example, this is where formal training can kick in. Like, how do I give feedback so that it works, so that it's not offensive? How do I work with, feedback, etc. But also the entire process, the entire system, the entire infrastructure should be a matter of feedback and impact assessment, so that we can manage it. Nothing that we can't measure, we can manage. And this is why very often when we talk about mentoring today, we talk about the digital platform that is in place, because you cannot measure it, you cannot structure it, you cannot guide, you cannot reinforce a framework to 100% of the company without the technology. But with the technology, it's easier to do. So that's the idea we would like to finish off on. This is the reason why we do those webinars. We are Mentessa. We would love to be in touch with you and to, you know, um, uh, get your questions and get talking and learn from your experiences. Feel free to answer all of the blue slides questions that we asked you afterwards on LinkedIn. Just drop us a message, me or Raymond. We are super open and very much looking forward to meeting you. Our purpose at Mentessa is to help organizations like yours to build a connected learning culture. We are big believers in, mentoring as a great way to do it. But despite building an award-winning platform for mentoring and community building that helps you do all of the things that we said we should do, we are not focusing on technology only. We also have developed our proprietary framework and advise you right where you are and where you're starting towards, towards making learning culture more of a day-to-day in your company. We do it with technology, but we also know that it needs all of those other things in place, like the framework and the training and the facilitation. So we are really happy and ready to help you here. We've done this for quite some companies internationally, and I am very excited about having Raymond on board since last year, because he's our exclusive partner in the Netherlands. So if you're looking for a local, expert who can guide you in those processes into culture transformation, Raymond is super experienced in this, and we hope to be able to connect you with more and more partners in different countries in the next months.
Absolutely.
Um,
But
We,
also,
yeah, yes, we are also sharing our knowledge through those LinkedIn lives. This is how we
yes,
are living a little bit the learning culture, Raymond, right?
absolutely. There we are, Tina.
Yes. And if you would like to learn more specifically about mentoring, we have one in exactly in 1 week where we are going to present the mentoring trends we research for 2026. There are a few surprising things about them. So make sure to register on LinkedIn or here through the QR code. And we have our, for everybody else who is more like, I would like to read it on my own, we have a free resource section on Mentessa. It doesn't require an email. You can just download quite some templates and resources all around mentoring and culture building. And other than that, I think we would just like to hear from you. And thank you for your time. And thank you, Raymond, for doing this with me. I just
Yes,
so
thank
much
you.
appreciate
Thank you,
us
Tina, for
doing this
sharing your
together.
knowledge and taking us through the whole transition of the opportunity that AI has, and also the challenges that it creates in cultures, in organizations, and specifically down to individual and people behavior. So hopefully, with this webinar, we've been able to give you some information and some background on what's happening around you, that no, you're not the only one who's experiencing the turmoil and the consequences. So looking forward to seeing you next time in the next webinar, and thank you for now. Thanks again, Tina, and hope to see you soon. And put your questions in the chat and in the LinkedIn group.
Yes, even tomorrow. That's fine
Yes.
with us.
All right, have a
Bye.
great day. Thank you. Bye bye.